So this is part 2 of a series of little videos to work through the magazine project here. In the first video we created the cutout and placed the image and did the title here. So what I want to do going forward is creating many of these individual text elements that are on the front page and make them look very close to the original with the different fonts, the alignments, the sizing, the colors, and everything. So let's get started with this part here. I am just zooming in a little bit here, and I want to do this essentially the same thing as I did with the title. I'm going to create a text element that I'm just going to create roughly here, and I start typing my word that I want to appear here, fashion. And I'm just going to do that by itself. So it needs to be right aligned to my text box. Up here is the alignments that you can choose. Right aligned. Command A to select it all. And I need to find a font that matches the original here. So I'm pulling up my font doc application again. And I'm typing in fashion. And let's preview this one here. And it's updating, and I can just know that this is a, previously you can look for it, it was a century, ended up being a century font. Where is it at? Century. So here's my century. Actually, the century Gothic is a font that is very close to the original here that I'm going to be using. It has a nice pointy A, and the S has a very similar shape to this one here, and also the N has a very similar shape. So century Gothic is my font of choice for this particular element. So century Gothic. I have so many fonts. Here we are, Century Gothic, regular. And I need to dial up the size a fair bit. And actually, to make our life easier here, to get this just right, since we do have the original right over here, I can just try and make it match the original right here. So I'm just dialing up my font size a little bit now. With inside here, and I'm just going to dial it up until it's very close to the original, and maybe making it a little bit taller by adjusting the font height. And with that I can get something that is very close. See, when I overlay it here, it almost perfectly matches. So when I bring it over here, and right about here, if I want to be precise about it, I can drag down a guideline and then make my fashion word here match very precisely. It's a little thinner in appearance than the original. I can choose bold, which is a little bolder than the original, so something in between. I can use regular, and then I can dial in a little bit of a stroke, which kind of paints a very thin line on the outside, and you want to be very small here. 0.2 for example. Hit enter. Makes it very gently thicker, and I can just kind of play with this parameter a little bit. 0.4 point just gives it a very subtle increase in thickness that is that you can fine-tune until you get just the right thickness of the font that you want. I dial down my box. Now that I'm happy with it, I'm going to lock it down. As I'm going forward, I'm going to create my font element, lock it down, and then I create the next one. So same thing again. This has a different font, I believe. I'm not sure that this is the same one. as the Century Gothic. Let's take a look real quick. If I type in 2011, select it, go back to my Century Gothic. Century Gothic, where are we at? My goodness, so many fonts. And I dial up the size. And it actually is the same font here. So that's good enough actually for what I want to do. So I make this nice and tall, and again I can just bring it over here. Since I have it right here, I want it to be just the same size, so it needs to be quite a bit bigger. Let's try 160, that's too big. And I'm just clicking here a lot, too much really. Should try this out before I record it. It's clearly not the right size now. Let's dial it back to 90. Oh, there we are. That gets a little better. So the size, the height is about right, or the size of the font, but it's much more spread out in what I am creating here. So what I need to do is tighten up my letter spacing dramatically. So this tracking adjustment allows me to tighten up the letters. And the 0 is almost touching right now, so I'm going to individually adjust the letter tracking actually, because there's much less space between the 0 and the 1, and this whole thing here actually needs to be tightened up. So I'm just tightening up the 1s actually. And then I'm dialing in my 0, tightening up the spacing between the 0 and the 1. And now this should be almost perfectly matching the original. And so you can see when I overlay it here, it's a very close match. I want it to be right aligned. And then I can move it into place so that it's right about in the right spot, like so. And this is my 2011. And I'm just going to do the same thing for the next piece down here. I'm going to pause for a second. So I've just typed in my basic text that I want to be appearing here, the amazingly wearable clothes to love forever. I need to, and I dialed in the same font again, my Century Gothic, and got the font size roughly right. So I'm going to move this over here again to just kind of compare it to the original. One of the things that I see is that my line spacing is quite, well, not that far off, but I need to tighten up the line spacing between the individual lines. Up here I have a directly below the font size, I can tighten up the distance between the lines until I get just the right spacing from one line to the next. And let me just see whether the rest is about, it's actually fairly close match right now. This is good enough actually for what I'm going for. So again, I move it right over here. And I'm just going to visually align it directly below my number for 2011. I'm going to dial up just the thickness just a little bit again by changing my stroke to 0.4. Let's try that, see what that looks like. So very subtle stroke selections allow you to change the weight of the font in a very subtle fashion here. Because sometimes the actual bold font is a little bit too heavy and the regular font is too thin, so you can make very subtle adjustments using the stroke adjustment here. I'm done with this, locking it down, and then moving to the simple plus sign here. Same thing again. And actually, let me do the number 10 real quick. 10. Actually, I should just start with the original here. This is because I'm pretty sure it's the same font, so unlocking my original thing by clicking on the little lock symbol. Can you see how this appears? You can unlock the individual elements and relock them again individually. Right now I want to copy this. I hold down my Option key, which gives me the 2 double arrows. I can copy this element. And I'm locking down the original again. Now this one here I want to change. It's I wanted to say 1, 0. I want it to be quite tight, so I'm tightening up the tracking. And I want to change the size of the font as well to something that very closely matches the number on the left here. 120, let's see what that looks like. Alright, so again I can drag it over here to get sort of a visual comparison of the two. I'm not that far off. There we go. A little taller. I'm just stretching it, the height a little bit. And now I have my font fairly closely matching the original here. So it goes right down here. And of course I need to change the color of it. Again, I highlight the text, choose my eyedropper tool, and I just click on the original text here. Gives it exactly that same color. And this is how we are going to do the rest of these elements here. I'm only making a change to the ways to transform yourself in the new year to make it fit onto 3 lines, because otherwise the word down here would appear on my dark background here and it would be very hard to read. So, and I also need the plus sign. I'm going to do this offline for a moment so you don't have to watch me do every single one of these. So I'm going to pause for a moment. So here I'm back. I did these 2 pieces here, the plus sign and the word, and actually I think I'm changing this around a little bit since it works out not so bad when I have it zoomed in here. You can see on the bottom right here how actually this word here is over the dark part, which makes it hard to read. But since the entire word, I'm just going to change the color on it from black to give it a white color. Go to the color palette and click on white, and that makes that word white. So that's a reasonable compromise, and you may have to do that too when you have text or a different background image where the black text or white text, whatever the original is, may be very hard to read. You can change the color of it to make it readable. So I'm going to use it like this here. Slightly different from my original that I showed you here, but this is a workable compromise here, I believe. So right click and locking it down. You can press Command L or Control L on the PC to do that. And I'm going to go back out here at 70%. And I'm going to do the pieces on the left here. And they are all pretty much the same. As far as I know, it's all the same font that I used here. One thing I should tighten up here a little bit. No, this is actually very close. Although these look a little taller here. I'm not sure. Let me work with this one a little bit more here. The text looks taller in itself. So I'm going to adjust the height of the lettering a little bit, because on the left in the original the font looks quite tall actually. And so this is good. I'm just going to move it down a little bit using my arrow keys to nudge it down slightly, and this looks about right to me. So there we have that part. I'm going to lock this by pressing Command L so I don't accidentally change it later on, as I will the plus sign. And I'm going to pause for a moment and create the elements on the left here, which are really much of the same as on the right, except they're left aligned, but it's the same technique. So I'm going to do that offline for a moment here. So I've created the other elements here, and the one piece that's a little different than the others is when I zoom in, here I have this quoted text piece, and here the left edge aligns with the quote symbol. Actually, on the original, it actually is aligned with just the letters, and the double quote sticks out to the left a little bit. So that's one detail I want to get right. And I can do that by indenting the lines below the first one. And there's an adjustment here where I can dial in sort of an indentation, and I'm going to indent them until the I letter is lined up with the rest of the lines here. And now when I line up my actual word, I line it up with the letters to this left guideline so that visually it aligns with the text above, and the double quote symbol sticks out to the left. I'm going to turn on preview mode briefly to see everything without all of these guidelines. So it's starting to look nice and clean actually. And my new year looks reasonable down here. My alignment here visually is aligned, and this little double quote just sticks out to the left. So switching back to normal, which shows you all of these guidelines and everything, and you should really work in this mode here so you can see what's going on. Otherwise the alignments will be imprecise, and you need to get them right to get a high quality project here. So the next piece here is my little diagonal text element that I want to create right here. Why we get fat? It's not what you think. So I'm going to start out actually over here by just kind of creating this right over here, and I'm typing in the text. So I've typed in the text, and I'm going to work on it over here so it half overlaps. One thing that's going on here, we have different fonts. Again, I'm switching to my Century Gothic font, which is a font that is just used a lot here. Century Gothic. This is actually bold here, the top piece. The bottom piece is just plain Century Gothic. The top is all uppercase. The bottom line has upper and lowercase with the first letter capitalized. You want to get those details right. So really take a close look at what's going on with your fonts. And let me switch the font face here again to Century Gothic. This is my regular font face. This entire thing is actually, I should be having this centered. So by switching to the object view, I see my box, and I also see this alignment. Actually, I need to be in the text piece. When I double click inside in text editing mode, I see these alignment selections, and aligning center aligns well. That's just one line. Centers things, since my text, the original, is really centered. I can tighten this up a little bit. What I want to do is create this, give it a white background actually. Now when I use my black arrow tool to select the text frame, the entire object, I can set a fill color. And I can do that down here as well in the color palette. With my the fill color element selected, I can select white. And that gives everything a white background. So now when it's over my text, it has a white background. It's a little bit too close to the top edge, and it's also, the lines are not spaced quite right. So I select everything, tighten up my line spacing. These are quite close together, not that close. And I need the whole thing to be moved down. Here's a text adjustment to give it a little bit of an offset. So I'm going to give it a little bit of an offset so it stays away from the top edge a little bit. Tighten up the box, and now here's my text element that I need to rotate now. So I want to align it. I'm not sure whether it's a perfect 45. It's not. Align it like so. And I need to make it a little larger. The whole thing needs to be made larger yet so that the font size matches the original here. So, and with the black arrow you can rotate. Moving outside the corner I can rotate, adjust it. Clicking inside I can get the size just about right. Top and bottom. This bottom part needs to be, I guess, perhaps bold as well. and it needs to be spaced out a little bit more because now it's touching the top line. So I'm increasing the line spacing a little bit, and now it's fairly close to the original here. So, and this is what I'm going to use on my new page here. So I'm going to zoom out, move over, and position this element here so that it overlaps and is very close to the O, but not touching it quite. So I can fine-tune it with my arrow keys to get a very subtle adjustment here. So this is about right. And again, when I preview this, I get the look, especially if I click outside. This is really getting close to where I want to be. In fact, I have most of the elements in place, except there's a little JAN to indicate the January. And then for the last piece, I'm going to do this, this barcode piece at the very bottom. This is a real detail piece. You don't have to do that for this project, but in case you want to do that for added realism, I'm going to create this guy here from scratch, just adding a couple lines and some text to it. And so let me do that next, in fact, here. So in order to get this right, I'm going to copy an original thing and just kind of paste it in here so I can work with the original barcode snippet here. So I'm going to go offline for a moment and copy and cut out one of these barcode things from one of the other magazines, or actually this exact one from a different image. Let me just do that here, because I can see the whole thing. Let me just dial this down a little bit, extend my frame so I can see the whole frame, and I can just actually work directly here. So let me create a element right next to here that should duplicate my barcode here very closely. So I'm going to start with I'm going to start by locking down this element for now until I get this barcode right. I'm choosing my rectangle. I'm creating a rectangle that is exactly the same size, and I want it to be filled with white color. So here's my white rectangle. I'm dragging it over a little bit, and then I want to add some text on top of that. So the text element that I want to create actually will have this $3.99 US and $4.99 foreign. It's a little too big for what I have here, so it needs to come down in size a little bit. And the fonts that I don't really have this font on my system. The one that's closest and looks kind of very machine readable of sorts is this font here, this OCR-A standard, and this is what I'm going to use. It's fairly close match. Let me dial it down one notch. So we're just looking for something that when you look at it briefly, it looks like a real barcode element here. So this is my one text, and I'm creating all of the other ones the same way, all the other text elements, I should say. What's different here is these little lines, right? So in order to create those, I'm going to actually create just a few of them. I'm going to create one line that is perfectly straight, very thin, and I'm going to give it just a stroke of 1 point. Well, let's make it 2 points. And I need to make it black. Ooh, but not the fill. Yeah, the fill. So this should give me it's filled with black. It has no stroke. So this should be a reasonable line. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to move it over here. How about that? So you can see what's going on here. And it has nothing at all. I need to use why is it not filled with black? Because the line perhaps only has a stroke, but no fill. Ooh, that's strange. What's going on here? Hold on a second. Okay, so the line actually is a diagonal inside this frame, so I just accidentally extended it, so I'm going to snap it back to its original size so that I can, this is my starting point. We just have a bunch of thin line and a bunch of thick lines. There's not a whole lot else to it, but I want it to be about the right height, so I can change the height of it, so it's like that. And I don't want to create 50 of these individually, so I'm going to use my Option key to duplicate it, and then I'm going to lock down my background image here, Control L to lock it, so I can select just the lines. Option again, I can just double them up, select all of them, double them up. So with that you can get a whole bunch of lines fairly quickly when I hold down my Shift key while I do that, and I'm doubling up all of them like so. Then I need to have a few that are a little thicker, and I'm going to just increase the font size like so, and I'm going to create a couple of these here as well to just get sort of a fake barcode. Nobody's going to inspect this really or try to actually point a reader to it. So I'm just going to overlay these here to just give sort of visually the appearance of a barcode that has thin and thick lines like so. And zooming out just a little bit, I want this also as wide as the original, I suppose. So it needs to be a little wider than that. I'm going to select all of them, dragging them over here so I can see how many more I need. I'm going to select just a few more, duplicating them again, just so that they match the width of this original element here. Clicking and selecting and dragging it back over here so it roughly aligns where I need it to be. So this is my fake barcode here, and you can probably spend a little bit more time fine-tuning that. I don't like how it's different. It must have been a little bit sloppy here with the alignment as I was creating them, and they're slightly offset at the bottom here. I don't quite care for that. But you can do a better job when you are not recording yourself doing this. So I do the same thing, copy these guys over here. There's a shorter barcode. I can select all of them, shorten them like this here. Well, they actually should be taller, right about like this here. And I'm going to add text elements. The three that are around here are very straightforward. 0, 1. This is just a rotated text, the same as a puff. The 0 and the 1 here. This one is a little different, the 3, 5, 7 piece. I'm going to show you how to do that. Again, I have my box. 3, 5, 7, 0, 7, 9. Did that work? I'm not sure that did work. Hold on a second. Create this down here. What's going on here? Ooh, this isn't working at all. Hold on. Not sure what that was about, but I can create a text element here now. I swear it just worked. Okay, so oh, and I have very large font. I need something very small. It's the OCRA. It needs to be very small. So now when I type in the number that I want, that being the 357079, 357079, and I again can give this box a white background by selecting the white background color and sizing it just so. And now when I move this over my text box, I get a very similar look to the original here with this inset number, very tight, sort of covering part of the barcode here. So that's it. I'm going to add the other few numbers here online. So I created this barcode. I actually used my previous one that I had a little bit more time to develop this one. I did the preparation work, so I'm going to use this one instead of the one that I had just created here. I'm actually going to select these guys, delete them. I'm going to use my one here. And they're all kind of connected here. All of the images here that are all the pieces that are in here, they're all grouped together. So when first you create it, everything is individual. And you can select every single piece by itself. And this is how I created it. Once you are finished creating this, you want to select all of them and group them together so that they all stay connected. So when you move this thing, you don't actually move individual pieces inside this element because it's sort of a self-contained element here, this barcode. And I'm going to move it into position here on my new page that I'm creating here. So this is my barcode that goes in the bottom corner. Now I can unlock this guy here, or let me see this guy. It is still locked. I need to go up here to click here to unlock it. And then I can fix my bottom edge of the page again because I had extended it so that I can see the full barcode. And I want it to just match up again. So, and I want my barcode to be just in the bottom right corner here. So this is fairly close to what I'm after here for the cover page. And the only piece that's missing here is the little January piece. And other than that, we are pretty much done with our cover page. And I'm going to turn it back into, well, I want to see both of them at the same time. So I'm going to, instead of turning on preview, which hides my original, I'm going to switch to normal, and I'm going to select view options that allows me to hide the frame edges, cleans up this nicely, and also hide my guides. So then I can see both of these pages side by side, and this is indeed a very close match to the original. So this completes our cover page portion. Sorry, this is a long movie, 230 or well 145 and 130-minute movie. But it is a fairly involved, and this is hopefully valuable information to you. So for the next video, we're going to get started on the interior page, and that will probably be recorded on the next day. So if you're looking for the follow-up, check back in a day or two, unless you're watching this after early December 2011. Both of the videos should obviously be up in a few days and be accessible. So this is the cover page. Next video will go into the details of the interior pages and how to lay those out. See you then.